Hello and welcome to our second weekly update video for Starship Simulator. I'm joined again by Claire.
Hi.
And she'll be helping us navigate the ship around the solar system. And this week we've been working on all of the planets in our solar system, making sure that they're now rendered at their proper real-world scales. Previously they were all limited to being Earth-sized because the built-in atmosphere component in Unreal Engine can't be resized at runtime. But we're now using a new system, so all the planets can be their real-world sizes with atmospheres, which is great. We've also been working on the sun and having the sun intensity fall off over distance. So that's employing the inverse square law to ensure that the sunlight at Mercury is a lot brighter than it would be at, say, Pluto. Also the sun scale in the sky will change over distance. We've also been working on a lot of the network code so that we can do all this in multiplayer, and it's nice to see the bridge gameplay being fleshed out even more each week. So there's more and more we can do together in multiplayer on the bridge. And there's been some other tweaks here and there just to get things looking a bit nicer. So if we embark on a tour of our solar system, and just a quick thing here, you can see that we are actually in orbit now around the Earth. So we actually slowly orbit the planets as we get to them. Okay, can you please target Mercury? Let's start there and work our way outwards.
There you go.
Thank you. And we're going to adjust our approach distance to 500 kilometers because Mercury is relatively tiny compared to Earth. Let's just pitch down so we don't go slamming into the planet. Okay, so another thing I've been working on is the warp effect itself, so the distortion, the warping of space around the ship, and I really wanted that to describe the way that the engine's working by compressing and expanding space. It still needs some tweaks, but it's getting there. Okay, so well, that's a little bit closer than I planned. So here we are at Mercury, and you can see that the surface does have some physical features. It's not true 3D. This is just tessellation on a material. The true 3D planets will come at a later date, but that'll do for now, just add a bit of visual interest. And you can see that the sunlight here is also very bright, so there's the sun over there. So you can see that it's quite large in the sky, and it's casting quite an intense light onto the bridge. And if I just kind of roll the ship towards it a bit, you can see that the sunlight coming through the windows is quite intense. Okay, so next up would be Venus, please.
There you go.
Thank you. I have to try and remember all the planets in the right order. Okay, so we're going to approach at, let's go for 5,000 kilometers. It's a much bigger planet than Mercury. With Venus, we've just got the upper cloud layer. We haven't got a surface below there yet, and in the future it would be great if we could make that a volumetric cloud effect as well. But yeah, so that's Venus for now. Not very interesting really, just a cloudy sphere. Okay, next up, if we go back to Earth again.
Okay.
Just to get comparison in scale, so it's Venus, which is a little bit smaller than Earth, so if we warp on back to Earth, keep our approach distance the same. So you can see Earth is just a little bit bigger, and again we've got some tessellated material there just to raise up the mountains a little bit. Okay, next up would be Mars, please.
Okay.
Thank you. So I did quite a bit more work on Mars to try and get it as photorealistic as possible. As you'll see, just as we approach. If you take a look at the twilight side of the planet there, you can see that it's actually blue. And the reason for that is because the sun is shining sideways through the Martian atmosphere. It's not dense enough to create a typical red sunset like you'd have on Earth with our much denser atmosphere. So on Mars, the sunset's actually blue. And if you look at some of the Mars lander photographs, you can actually see a very clear blue sunset, which is really cool. And it's little facts like that, little science tidbits that we're trying to get into the game. So everything you do is as scientifically accurate as possible. And I love the idea of maybe getting a class of students into the bridge with a teacher, and they can do a genuine tour of the solar system with genuine science, which I think would be really, really cool. So next up would be Jupiter, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to have to change our arrival altitude here because Jupiter is enormous, so we're going to push that all the way up to 50,000 kilometers. There we go. And Jupiter's using one of the NASA images that I was able to find on one of the NASA websites. Eventually that will be replaced with a volumetric cloud effect, but for now it is just a flat texture with an atmosphere. It still looks cool nonetheless, and the scale is just breathtaking. You can't really appreciate it on the video perhaps, but when you're actually walking around it does look absolutely huge out the window. And equally huge is Saturn. If you could please lock in Saturn. Penelope's getting him a business. Oh. The NPCs kind of randomly path between points of interest, and they do get in the way sometimes. You have to excuse their animations. These are only temporary. They look a bit weird sometimes. Let's just scoot out of the way of Jupiter. Actually, if we go sideways, you can watch it disappear out the window. There it goes. Interesting fact with Saturn, we actually lost its rings a couple of days ago, and they have now come back though, so there they are in all their glory. And the rings they just exist as a flat texture at the moment, but they will be replaced by an actual volumetric cloud effect with dust and blocks of ice and all sorts of things that you can fly around, but that's scheduled for much later in development. But yeah. Saturn looks particularly cool. And the other gas giants and ring systems that we generate procedurally for other star systems could be any kind of effect, really, any kind of ring system. The procedural code is quite versatile there. Okay, so next would be Uranus, please. Or Uranus, depending on how you prefer to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We'll keep the arrival altitude the same, because it's another gas giant, so it's again huge. I'm going to try and fly through the rings. Let's get that there, do that there. Where's the sun gone? There, and that way a bit, and then that way a bit. I think, no, down a bit. Okay, looks good. And go. Nailed it. Okay, and there's Uranus, which I've always thought has a really unique and interesting colour in the solar system. And as with all things in the game, of course, I've gone to great lengths to try and match the colour tone to real photographs, so NASA imageries from the Hubble and other telescopes, or passing spacecraft, just to try and make it as realistic as possible. And the same of which will be true for Neptune. So we can go to Neptune next, please.
There you go.
Thank you. So the travel time between planets at the moment is only 10 seconds. That won't always be the case. And you can see here that they are actually laid out physically. But spatially, they're not travel compatible in a spatial way. That all still needs to be programmed in. So right now it's just a 10-second straight line to each one. But there is Neptune. And again, I'm using NASA imagery for the surface, which is particularly low resolution for Neptune, but I'm able to add a little bit of extra detail just to try and bring out the surface a little bit. But with all of the gas giants, they will be replaced by a procedural system, which will give much more of a volumetric surface effect. And one of the things we're hoping to include in the game is the ability to use the gas giants to skim the upper cloud layers to gather fuel and resources, which will look absolutely epic if we can pull that off nicely. And finally, it would be poor old little Pluto. So we are including Pluto, despite it not technically being a planet now, but Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to have to fight me on that one. And we have to actually change the arrival distance a bit on Pluto because it is so tiny, back down to 500 kilometers. And beyond Pluto, we'll include other Kuiper Belt objects. Essentially anything that's big enough to be worthy to go and investigate, we will include in the solar system. There is no real limit in the system, in the game system, to how many objects we can place. So as many as we can fit, we'll put in. And there is Pluto. So I've rather overemphasized the surface detail a little bit, but again, it's using material tessellation to get the fake 3D effect. Okay, so that's all the planets, and oh yes, of course, the Sun. You can see the Sun now is just literally just another star in the sky from 40 AU away, which is where we are, and the sunlight itself is also quite a lot dimmer this far out. It is said that the sunlight should be roughly the same as indoor lighting on Pluto, and you can see that the sunlight shining into the bridge here is not that much different really from the bridge lighting, so it's approximately right. And like everything else, that should be how it should appear in the real world. Okay, so one last thing I'd like to do is just do a bit of a size comparison between some of the planets. So if you could please target Earth for us.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'm going to set the arrival distance to 10,000 kilometers, and we'll now keep that consistent. So if I go and step over here a sec. So if we just get an idea for the scale of Earth a sec. So if you just kind of remember how big Earth looks in the sky there, then what we'll do is if you could target Jupiter, please.
Okay.
Thank you all. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to warp on over to Jupiter, and then we'll take a look at the size of Jupiter in comparison. Which is an absolute beast, it's huge. And again, in the live game environment, as you're wandering around and looking at this thing out of the windows, you can really truly appreciate just the scale of this object. And I'm looking forward to getting its moons and some orbital stations in as well, just so you can just travel to destinations that are around. And it'd be great to be on the moons and seeing Jupiter rising in the horizon. Okay, so I think that's about it for this week. Next week we're going to focus more on travelling away from our solar system, over to some of the other procedural star systems, which will have their own planets that are all procedurally generated and all completely unique. Yeah, and I think that's it this week. I don't think there's anything else to add, is there, Clara?
No, I think else.
No? Okay, so thanks for taking an interest in the project, and if you'd like to join our growing team of backers, there's a link to Patreon in our description. We truly appreciate all of their support, and honestly, without the support from our patrons, this project just definitely wouldn't be where it is today. And with more backers, we can help grow our development team and build this into an incredible space exploration experience. This truly is the game that I've personally wanted to play for decades, and it's such a privilege to finally actually be making it, so it's absolutely fantastic. And also, please do come join us in our Discord. We discuss the game in detail. We have some great conversations in the community about what should or shouldn't be included and what kind of systems people would like to see. And we generally just get nerdy over sci-fi and human spaceflight and all that kind of stuff. So do come and join us and get involved. And I think that's about it for us. So thanks again, and we'll see you in next week's video.